Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah.
It is That Effin' Sports Show. We are here with the Adam Hulse of Adam Hulse Sports, NFL writer for Sportskeeda. We go through every team in the NFL. We're predicting records, predicting who's going to be where. We started in the NFC South. Go back and check those episodes. We are at the end of the AFC South. So we've already done Houston. We've already done the Titans. We've already done the Colts. None of them really doing much to impress this year. And then we get to the Jags. The Jags are fortunate enough to play with the Colts and the Titans and the Texans. And then they are fortunate enough to be in the AFC South, which has to play the NFC South. 4 more games against not great teams. They'll play the NFC North, which is filled with better teams, and then they'll get a couple outliers based on their finish. Unfortunately for the Jags, they finished pretty well, so they're going to draw some pretty big opponents. Game 1 is in Indy, and although they split with Indy last year, the Jags are just going to be better, and we gave them the win at Indy.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags got off to a slow start last year, with the transition from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. Everything kind of clicked midseason, second half of last year and into the playoffs. The Jags were one of the best teams in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence was one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that carries over to this year, and they just might be going up, up, up.
Week 2, circled on everybody's calendar. It's definitely going to be the premier game of the week. Kansas City comes to Jacksonville. Regular season, Jacksonville, of course, lost to Kansas City. We know how the playoffs went down on the road to the Super Bowl. Jags, Kansas City. I mean, this is going to be a great game, Adam.
Oh, this is an awesome game. It's a rematch game. It's a revenge type of game. It's a matchup between Patrick Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence, who I believe for the next decade are going to be 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Awesome matchup on paper. And look, I'm doing it in Jacksonville. I'm taking the Jags to get their revenge at home, and they're going to beat the Chiefs in this game.
Look, this is not as bold a prediction as it sounds. We talked about in the Colts episode that the Colts were able to beat Kansas City, and it was early on in the season in week 3. So it's fair to say that Kansas City could possibly start slow. I mean, they've kind of reserved those tanks. They rev it up at the end, and so it's not that far out of the realm of possibility to give the Jags a win at home. I'm not going to do it. I'm giving the Jags the loss against Kansas City, but I'm not mad at you for going out on a limb and making this pick.
Look, the Jags have been a joke for a while. This is a different Jags team. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It was not a fluke. They did not just catch fire last year, in my opinion. That is who the Jags are going to be moving forward. And don't forget, they're also adding Calvin Ridley into the mix now at receiver, where we've seen Calvin Ridley at his best be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. If he can get back to doing that, remember, he missed time, not really for injury. It was the suspension due to gambling. So there isn't any physical stuff that should be hindering him. There's no reason to believe Ridley won't once again be one of the better receivers in the league. Add that to what Lawrence did in the second half of last year, and watch out.
Calvin Ridley, one of the better receivers in the league. Adam has put it out there. That could be up there with my Carolina prediction. Go back and check that show, see how that came out. That's a barn burner right there. I like that. Week 3, Houston comes to the Jags. We've already talked about Jacksonville sweeping this division, getting the win in week 3 against Houston. Then they go across the pond. Sorry about that horrible accent. They play Atlanta. We gave the Jags the win against Atlanta in a Ridley revenge game, but I don't really think that's a far out pick with or without Ridley. I still think Jacksonville's used to playing over there. Atlanta, not necessarily. Jags get this one kind of easy, I think.
Jags at their home away from home these days, right? Over in London, over in England. I think they'll be more comfortable over there. Plus, they're just a better team than the Falcons. And like you said, that's the revenge game for Ridley, right? So a lot of reasons to like the Jags.
Then it gets interesting. I've been excited to talk about this scenario ever since I looked at the schedule. Jacksonville gets to stay in London. They don't have to come back. They switch stadiums. They go over to Tottenham, where they're going to face Buffalo in week 5. They have 2 London games in a row. Unheard of. It's never happened. I'm not sure how it happened this time, other than because of London's availability in stadiums and all that. This is played in the States. I have a much harder time picking this game, but the fact that Jacksonville doesn't have to make the trip and Buffalo does, I'm giving Jacksonville the win in this game.
You know, it's a very strange thing, right? We haven't seen this before, like you said. Usually it's after you play the London game, you automatically get that bye week, right? Because of the brutal travel. They're trying something new now and letting the Jags kind of stay over there. Look, there's, some rumors out there about this. I know it's going to be down the road, like years down the road, but I think that the NFL's ultimate goal is to have an entire division kind of in Europe. So when teams go over to England or Germany or whatever to go play a game, you stay over there and play a full 4-team division while you're there. So you stay there for a month before coming back. If they're ever going to have a team transfer to London, it doesn't really work with one team. It can kind of work with 4 teams. I think that's the goal. I mean, we're talking probably at least a decade down the road at the very least if this is ever going to happen. But this might be phase 1 of that experimental play multiple games over there. They're testing it with the Jags, the team that's more familiar with anybody with being across the ponds. But look, with all of that being said, I am actually going to give the Bills the win in this game because it's that weird scenario and like you're staying in London, you're not at home, you're going to be using strange facilities and practice areas and meeting rooms that you've never used before, and it's just an awkward type of situation. So I'm going to go with Buffalo in this one.
You're getting it all live, folks. We're doing this live as we go. So far, Ridley's going to be one of the better receivers, and you just heard Adam Hulse give Jacksonville a loss. I wish I had time to take a breath, but we've got to keep moving on. I'm almost at a loss for words, and if you know me, that's kind of a big thing. Week 6, we give Jags the win in Indy as they continue their sweep of the division. Then they play New Orleans in week 7. If you listen to previous shows, we give the Jags the win in New Orleans, just being the better team, even though we gave New Orleans a lot of credit for being much improved with Derek Carr and company. Just still not good enough for the Jags.
Yeah, I just think the Jags are the better team, more continuity as well. I favor the Jags there.
Week 8 at Pittsburgh, it's the Steelers. You know which way I want to go with this, but I have to look at it objectively. Can't always pick as a fan. Jacksonville in Pittsburgh, it should be a good game. I like the way this one looks on paper anyway, Adam.
It should be a good game. And look, I can't pick the Jags to win every game, okay? They're not going to go 16-0. They're probably not going to go 16-1. I'm actually going to give the Steelers the win in this one at home. The Jags will go into that game as the favorite and as they should be the favorite. Like we talk about, there's upsets every year. The Steelers playing at home are an upset threat to just about every other team in the NFL. I think this is one of those games the Steelers win that they're not necessarily supposed to win.
For the exact same reason, because that's at home, I have also given Pittsburgh the win. But I think what's important here is looking at this not as a fan, but trying to be objective. You're right. I mean, on paper, the Jags are going to have the momentum. They have a better team. I think Pittsburgh is going to be much improved, but I think it's that home stint right there. That's what gives them that little bit of edge. I think Tomlin gets it done. I agree with you. Pittsburgh gets the win. Jags finally get this much needed bye week. And then week 10 out of the bye, they welcome San Francisco. Let's call it another chance to prove just how good they are with San Francisco coming in week 10.
This is a cool matchup, right? Jags versus 49ers. Yeah, I like this matchup a lot. Very interesting game with two teams that don't play each other often. With the Jags being good now too. Like in previous years, you just see 49ers versus Jags. 49ers are going to win by double digits, right? But with this game being in Jacksonville, San Francisco having to come all the way across the country to play it, the Jags are coming off of their bye week. And regardless of who's playing quarterback for the 49ers, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the better quarterback in this game. So because of those three factors, I'm taking the Jags.
Yeah, honestly, it's the quarterback thing for me. I don't have a lot of faith in the San Francisco quarterback choices right now. I know Purdy played great, but I just don't see it continuing. And then you're going to fall back to Trey Lance, who doesn't have a lot of experience. We'll talk more about that in the San Francisco show. I agree with you. Coming off the bye week, they're at home. West Coast teams traveling east typically does not transfer well. I'm going to give Jacksonville the edge in, again, probably a great game. Tennessee comes into town next. We've already talked about the Jags sweep in this division multiple times. We give them the win, and when they travel to Houston in week 12, then we get another amazing matchup. Look, before we even get to the playoffs, Lawrence is going to have to take on Patrick Mahomes. He's going to have to take on Josh Allen, and now he gets to take on Joe Burrow at home. Cincinnati comes to Jacksonville in week 13. I'm giving Cincinnati the win in this one. I'm not even going to say the suspense. How do you got this one playing out?
It's in Jacksonville, so I want to take the Jags to win again. As I alluded to, the Jags aren't going to win all of them as high as I am on them. I took the Jags to beat the Chiefs, which was a pretty big pick there. So in this one, I'm going to go the other way, and I think Joe Burrow will get it done.
We agree that Cincinnati will pull this one off. As we get closer to playoff time, get closer to the end of the season, let's remember Jacksonville, they did not start off hot. Took a 5-game loss streak starting about week 3, but they turned it on. They won 7 of the last 9. Now we're getting to the end of the season. You gave the Jags the win over Kansas City, the loss to Buffalo, whereas I gave them the win to Buffalo. Now Cincinnati comes in. We both give them the loss to Joe Burrow. Is this a testament to the improvement of Joe Burrow? What's the big difference?
I see these 4 teams, Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Jags. I see them as the cream of the crop right now, in my opinion, because I'm super high on Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's going to be in the mix with those 3 other quarterbacks. Like, these are the elite teams, the elite quarterbacks, so a lot of these games can go either way. And a couple of these games are probably going to be rematched when we get to the playoffs this year. So it's pretty exciting to watch that we get some previews during the regular season and then which ones are going to meet up again in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up that point. This Cincinnati Jags game could definitely play out again. Round 1, Cincinnati. Week 14, they go to Cleveland. I think Cleveland is going to be improved. I don't think they're going to be improved enough to beat the Jags even in Cleveland. I give the Jags the win.
I'm with you on that. I think the Browns are a better team this year. I think they can have a competitive game with the Jags, but I think the Jags are better and they come out on top.
Baltimore comes to Jacksonville for week 15. I see regression in Baltimore, although there's not much room to regress more because Lamar got his bag, but I also see Lamar playing. I don't see the team being that much improved. I know Jacksonville finished strong last year. Baltimore comes in. What are you thinking?
Again, I just think that the Jags are the better team right now when I look at them top to bottom. They made the playoffs last year. They had that hot streak the second half of the season. So I think that the Jags are the better team, and I think that the Jags have the better quarterback. So put those 2 things together, and the Jags win again.
So in this episode, Adam has said Ridley's going to be top receiver. Jags are actually going to lose a game starting with Buffalo, and Lawrence is a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson. Whether these things are true or not, we will find out. I'm actually kind of given a wake-up call here. I think Baltimore wins this one, and the Jags are like, oh man, we're not invincible. Baltimore comes in, beats Jacksonville is my prediction. And according to the previous shows, we have them winning out at Tampa, Carolina coming into town at Tennessee, 3-win streak at the end. Bottom line being, I've still only got Jacksonville losing 4 games, and you've only got them losing 3. Obviously, top of the AFC South, obviously in contention to go to the show once again. Is Jacksonville going to make that run? Again, they've already seen the teams that they're going to likely see. They've seen Kansas City, they've seen Buffalo, they've seen Cincinnati. I think that kind of sets them up kind of nice for the playoffs, don't you?
I knew I would be having the Jags win a whole bunch of games, 14, maybe a little bit more than I thought I would have, but it might not be so crazy. I mean, considering you're not as high on the Jags as I am, right? But you have them winning 13 games. So, I only have them winning 1 more than you do. And look, if they really do go 14-3 or even 13-4, they're going to be in the mix to possibly be the team that gets the bye in the AFC, despite all the other juggernaut teams and elite quarterbacks in this conference. Their schedule is favorable, plays out nice for them. Even their tougher games, most of their tougher games are in Jacksonville, at home, or in London, their second home. So a lot of things kind of go in the Jags' way this year for the schedule, and they really could steal that top seed.
We talked about this for the NFC South. We've now talked about the AFC South. The recurring theme is the schedule. It is the strength or lack thereof, hurting some teams, helping others. The Jags have a tough schedule, but there's no way around it. They got to play Kansas City. They got to play Buffalo. They got to play San Francisco. They got to play Cincinnati. They got to play Baltimore. I'll put Baltimore in there. Pittsburgh is another game that is going to be tough. There's a lot of good games on Jacksonville's schedule. Of us kind of believers after seeing last year that Jacksonville has gotten stronger as well and can pull this off. Schedule notwithstanding, Jacksonville really with an opportunity to prove that they belong.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to have their opportunity to prove it. They're playing against those teams in the regular season that they're going to have to beat in the postseason if they want to make a deep run. With the schedule, it's not just about who you play. It's when and where you play them as well. That's what the matchups are all about. There's a lot of factors besides just better team comes out on top.
Big players show up in big games, and that's always been the recurring theme in the NFL. And we got one of the biggest around. That's Adam Hulse from Adam Hulse Sports. Find him on Twitter at Adam Hulse Sports, NFL writer for Sportskeeda. Go check out his stuff over there. The links. Thanks for joining us at That Effin Sports Show, at That Effin Show on Twitter, EFIN, as we run through every team, every division on the way to the start of the season. Go back and see the NFC South, how we got that one coming out. For the AFC South, the Jags easily take the top spot and possibly make a great run to the big game. Have a great one, everybody.
You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you